Alrighty, let's get going. Good morning, my name is Meg Deloff. I work for PNAMP and StreamNet under the almighty umbrella of Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission. Thanks for joining us for the first 2026 meeting of the PNAMP Fish Monitoring Work Group. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a couple meeting logistics. Hopefully you guys are used to this by now since we're all pros at online now. Unless you're speaking, please turn off your microphone. Some of the folks will have their video on just for a little bit here as I kind of introduce people. Otherwise, feel free to turn your camera off if you're not speaking as well. We can mute you guys, but we can't unmute you. So just so you know that we have the power to make you quiet, but we do not have the power to turn your mic back on. We're going to record this meeting and it will be available next week. So folks who weren't able to join today can check out the video. If your Teams is being finicky, try leaving and joining again. That sometimes helps, or use a different browser. Edge usually works better than Chrome, just the Microsoft, you know. Or try using the desktop version instead of the browser version, or vice versa. They can kind of be weird. So occasionally folks don't have access to the chat, so we encourage you to unmute and ask your questions or make comments. Next, I'd like to acknowledge the Fish Monitoring Work Group team. Names are associated with the tasks they previously have led or are currently leading. We're grateful for everyone's leadership. The core team exists of Casey Bleasner, Marika Dobos, Laura Erickson, Nancy Leonard, Russell Scranton, Ari Williams, and Jen Bayer. As a reminder, if you're interested in learning more about the Fish Monitoring Work Group or a particular task, you can visit the project page on the PNAMP website. These are just a few screenshots. All of this is the main page, and then you just scroll down and you can see tasks that we've done or tasks that we're currently working on. And then if you scroll down further, you can see previous meeting links and related documents. And you guys can always shoot me an email if you need some help with something in particular. And with that, if you guys could please open up the chat and type in your name and organization. This helps me keep track of participation, and it helps acquaint you guys with the chat function. And while you're doing that, I'll kind of give a really quick overview of the agenda. So typically in these meetings, we kick it off with updates on current tasks. And then next, Greg Wilke and Kris Warner will present Regional Mark Information System with a demo of the R package in GitHub, followed by Q&A and then discussion. And then we'll close the meeting with a quick wrap up and some next steps. Alrighty. And that'll lead us into task team updates. These are overviews of the progress since October. After all the updates are complete, I'll pause for questions. So normally we'll do it after each task, but I'm just going to do it at the end now. And so you guys can type questions in the chat while we're going through them, or we can just all circle back at the end after we give you guys all the updates. If you've been following us, you know we've been chipping away at this one for a while. I'm thrilled to announce that the paper is in the home stretch. If I knew how to do the victory trumpets, I would put it all over this slide. Pretty excited. Right now the paper is in, oh, and if you guys, I didn't explain what the paper was. It's a review of the carrying capacity estimation methods, including habitat expansion, stock recruitment methods, quantile regression, individual-based models, and food web modeling. So it's under the USGS peer review process right now, and Morgan has received some feedback, and we're just kind of waiting on one more. And then he'll integrate that into the paper, and then we should be ready for journal submission, hopefully in the coming weeks. And then after we launch this paper, we're planning on producing a best practices white paper as an additional resource to the material in this paper. So I'll keep you guys posted. Rotary screw trap is active again. And I'm going to hand this over to Sam Semino, who's a task lead on the tool development. Go ahead, Sam. Oh, okay. Sorry, hold on one sec, guys. Okay, no, I'm just going to do it. Sam can't join right now. So the RST initially started out as a comprehensive resource for the Columbia Basin rotary screw traps with specific information from multiple regional systems and sources. And then it was paused for a little bit, and now we're back active And so we've reached out to our contacts, and when we initially scoped this a couple of years ago, people had entered data in, and so we reached out to those folks and updated the data. And then we met with our developers, and we're working on providing a better user experience and interface. And then ideally the tool be a little bit more like the salmon data discovery tool or the fish regs tool. So if you guys are familiar with those, hopefully this will be similar to that. And then we met last month with Interested Bios to identify desired fields and flag issues with the kind of mock-up. And in the coming months, we're kind of going to be chipping away at that. You guys can shoot Sam an email or me if you guys have questions or if you want to participate in this. The scope will expand outside the Columbia River Basin to include Klamath Basin and Puget Sound. So those bios can enter their RST data in as well, or location ID, other type of contact info. And the product will hopefully be an online tool for connecting data, location information, and contact info for management entities and etc. So you should have a contact to reach out to if you want more information about a specific trap. And a pit tag data and analysis task. I know I've said it several times now, but have you heard? The pit tag data and analysis webinar series was a roaring success. We're following up on suggestions and working on either an in-person workshop or probably based on analysis or potentially another webinar series. I'm also gathering information on a sort of one-stop shop for pit tag data and analysis resources, things like Dart links or R codes for tools. And I will reach out to the folks on our distribution list for suggestions for that page. And I'm hopefully going to be able to demo a mock-up at the April meeting. So kind of look for emails on that. And then I'm going to turn this one over to Mari Williams, who's the lead on the upcoming SAR/SAS task. Mari, are you out there?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you can.
So this is, we have a task group forming, and I will send out scheduling poll soon to where we can launch. This is going to be in response to the ISAB's report on SAR and SAS metrics. They review data that is within the Coordinated Assessments Data Exchange and thought that there could be some improvements on the description detailing how and what the data that is in the SAR table in coordinated assessments is described to distinguish SAR from SAS. So small to adult return versus small to adult survival. So let me know if you're interested. My email's on there. Thank you.
Thanks, Mari. And then if you want to drop the link to the ISABSR metrics report, that'd be helpful in the chat, I think. I forgot to put that on my list of links to drop. But all right, thanks, Mari. Also upcoming is focal species draft polygon maps. Basically, we will develop focal species polygon maps for use by BPA's CB Fish, monitoring resources, and other regional partners that builds on the StreamNet PSMFC fish distribution layers. If you were at the October meeting, Sam gave a really great overview of this task. That recording's on our YouTube page. I'm leading the project now, moving forward with help from Van Hare and Jordan Miller. We're actually beginning internal meetings next week, so I will have more to share on this in April. So I'll give you guys more, just a teaser. And with that, that was the last update. Anybody have questions? And hopefully somebody on my core team can read the chat because I can't see it. I always rely on Mari. Russ, I see your hand up. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you go back to the rotary screw trap slide for a second? I just wanted to pass on information to BIOS and everybody else. So with the rotary screw trap inventory, or sorry, the data collection task, one of the things with this is we have several different inventories and resources that track screw trap information, whether it's StreamNet's facilities database, EPA's contract location or other contracting entity location information, Patagus has screw trap facilities as well. One of the main points, or one of the things that's going on, is trying to make sure that we're able to put people who are looking for data or get improved access to data or the status of what's happening. We know traps move. We know traps have stopped. Sometimes they're going to be reinstalled. We have cases right now where we're trying to reinstall or change significantly designs of where the traps are being operated in the Columbia for many of our partners. So one thing that I found as a kind of a disconnect that I'm trying to work on and communicate to biologists that we work with and fund at BPA, this inventory will connect to Patagus, but one of the things that we found is that there are facility sites. So the screw trap may not be the MMR site that people use, and there are differences in BIOS between identifying Patagus site as a screw trap, or sorry, as a trap and release location. Many BIOS, I think, still may select a river kilometer reach or the river reaches and say that they're releasing their fish upstream and up from that facility, and that facility is not marked on Patagus. So we're just looking at continuity of, facility IDs, names, what those sites are, where those release locations are, and what data is related to those, and what projects are related to those. So I think, we're trying to just establish some better relationships so we can reduce duplication of effort and data entry as well. But I just wanted to highlight that. And if people have questions or think it's worthwhile to discuss how do we document release locations in Patagus, I'd be up for having a side conversation with the bios on that at some point.
Thanks, Russ. All right. Back to our questions page. And I was able to open up the chat, so I didn't see too much aside from some link dropping. If my team could drop links for the Fish Marine Work Group page, the PNAMP YouTube channel, and then the pit tag data and analysis webinar series, that'd be great. And then we will move on. Alrighty. And with that, I am honored to introduce Greg Wilke, who is a database and application manager with Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission, and Kris Warner, a biologist working on hatchery monitoring and evaluation with Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. And with that, the stage is yours, Kris and Greg.
Make sure I'm unmuted here. Good morning, everybody. As Meg said, my name is Greg Wilke. I work at Pacific States, and I'm going to give you a quick refresher on the RMIS system before handing off to Kris, who will demonstrate how to access the data programmatically using an R package. I'm going to use the term RMIS or RMIS to mean RMPC or RMIS, just to generalize here today. As you know, RMIS, which is operated at PSMFC, provides coordination and data exchange services for coded wire tag data across the Pacific Northwest. We work with several dozen agencies, including major partners like Washington, Oregon, California, Alaska, and Canada, as well as numerous tribal and federal organizations. Next slide, please. A quick reminder of how data flows through the RMIS system. Your agencies submit data to PSMFC in PSC format. This includes releases, recoveries, catch sample, location codes, and descriptions. The RMIS project validates the data, sends back any errors for correction, and once it's clean, it goes into the RMIS database. From there, it's available coast-wide through the reporting system, and we exchange validated data with all participating agencies. The system works because everyone contributes and everyone benefits. Next slide, please. Just a reminder that our key documentation is always available on the website. The PSC location code schema, RMIS user guide, PSC format specification, and all the data files in multiple download formats are available on the rmpc.org website. I'm sure you're all familiar with these, so I won't belabor that point. Next slide, please. For interactive queries, the system has a standard reporting and standard reporting and analysis reporting for summarized data by tag code, management, fishery, and age class, plus other tools like location, search, fish facilities mapper, and find your tagged fish tool. The web tools serve most needs well, but sometimes you need to pull data directly into your analytical workflows, which is why we developed the API. Next slide, please. The RMIS API gives you programmatic access to recoveries, releases, locations, and catch sample data. The GET functionality is still in beta, but it is fully functional to get this data, and we're actively seeking feedback on how we can improve it. If you want to access data via the API, you'll need an API key from us for authorization. The documentation on this page covers the endpoints and operators. Building raw API calls works, but it can be cumbersome, which brings us to the R package. Next slide, please. The RMIS R package wraps the API in a convenient set of R functions. This was developed by Matt Callahan at NOAA with a few contributions from me and a few other folks. Instead of constructing HTTP calls, you call functions that pull data directly into your R environment data frames. And that's exactly what Kris is going to show you next.
All right, Kris, I'm going to stop sharing and let you take control.
All right, is everybody seeing that?
Yep, looking good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that, first off, for the opportunity to present today. And thanks for that introduction, Greg. That's perfect. So hello, everyone. My name is Kris Warner. I'm part of the Westside Hatchery Monitoring Evaluation Group. I'll be going through kind of a quick start to finish, high-level data get and summary workflow. This is going to be a really canned example of what a workflow might look like, primarily for the sake of demonstration, but I think most users of any skill set will get some value out of it. So as I mentioned, this presentation is designed to kind of highlight the current state of some R packages that are in development. Specifically, we'll be focusing on RMIS R and open into a discussion where we might progress into or might discuss progressing into a future that moves towards efficiency and repeatability. So a brief outline of the topics I'll cover today. Most of this will be redundant in this first topic. Greg did a great job with like the RMIS data overview, so I won't belabor those slides too much. Talk briefly about kind of a workflow and limitations using the user interface, graphic user interface, discuss some brief advantages of directly accessing the API, highlight some historic workarounds, and then get right into the actual use case and packages in development, that being RMIS R, and then segue into kind of closing thoughts and discussion. So brief overview, this is definitely redundant. The PSMFC has a centralized database for multi-agency records on fish releases, both hatchery and wild tag, coded wire tag recoveries, and catch sample records. In my experience in hatchery data, RMIS largely serves as a centralized database for retrieving the production and recovery records, which we've used for all sorts of summary and analyses across several teams. So I'm sure the user interface will look pretty familiar to those that have dug into this data prior. The GUI allows for retrieving tailored data sets in a variety of formats. Most often in my case, I use comma-separated value files or CSVs. There's definitely a lot of advantages to engaging with the UI. It's relatively intuitive. It's a really low barrier to entry for exploring data, though that can come with some risk as well. RMIS has some really interesting graphic summaries, kind of like, for example, showing coarse spatial resolution of coded wire tag recoveries. Those maps are really cool and can raise further research questions, which is all good stuff. But alongside those advantages, there's definitely some cons, including that the UI is limited in the amount of data that can be retrieved at one time, which can be a limiting factor for example, like long time series or multi-species analysis. UI workflows also can be difficult to reproduce. They require really detailed protocols, which can be a way to kind of set up sideboards for those sorts of processes. But none of that will never necessarily be as transparent or repeatable as like a scripted workflow. Like, for example, when manually handling those CSVs or even interacting with the graphic user interface, I'm perfectly capable of misclinking and fat fingering data entry. And I know I'm not alone in that regard. And I've got an example of one of those limitations highlighted on screen, with especially with the recovery data. The queries can quickly get quite large when looking at like a species scale or a long time series. So API access and R. The advantages and disadvantages are near opposite of what I just highlighted with the graphic user interface. There's larger query capabilities. It's transparent by nature of being a scripted workflow. Not to say that that's necessarily error-free by any means, but it is transparent and more easily traceable in terms of where errors might be resulting. And a scripted workflow that pings the API directly is much more shareable in nature, because you just need to pass an R script back and forth rather than transferring large data sets. Currently, the API is in early development. There's some missing fields, and I know folks that are part of the project are aware of that sort of thing. And if I'm remembering correctly, we're actually heading into another development cycle on the API, which is why gathering feedback is going to be so important. Some of those fields that are missing currently can be critical for certain analyses. And another another downside to API access and R package in general is that it is definitely a larger barrier to entry. It's a lot easier to navigate the website than it is necessarily if you aren't familiar with coding and scripting. And I myself consider myself a novice. That can be a large barrier to entry or intimidating for accessing this data directly. And one more pro for the user interface and a con, but hopefully something we can correct in the future with the R package, is that cleanup is facilitated. Cleanup needs to be facilitated. There's some views available on the UI that are very useful and have some of that automatically paired data that's often useful to most folks that are accessing some of these data sets, and I'll elaborate on that a bit down the line. So highlight some historic workarounds. In the past few years that I've been working with this data regularly, I was exposed to a few workarounds that were really elegant, including mirroring the RMIS database or sections of it locally using SQLite, or retrieving and compiling data sets with scripts that remotely access the data file index. They're functional. It really is elegant, but it's not necessarily ideal. A lot of these sorts of workarounds can result in really memory-intensive operations. I mean, if you mirror the whole database, we're talking several gigs of data that it ends up being stored locally, and things can get pretty bloated pretty quickly. I'll go into a bit more detail on two of the packages that I've used next, and then we'll go through that example workflow specifically of the RMIS-R package. So two packages that I've used in my workflows on a pretty regular basis are nice and confusingly named RMIS-R and R-RMIS. The couple of highlights for each of these is that RMIS-R retrieves directly from the API. It's really light on memory, but can be heavy on processing, and I'll talk more about that in the workflow example. It does require a stable connection. Interruptions to your internet service will collapse those connections and can end in truncated data sets. And currently, the package lacks quality of life helper functions. Our RMIS retrieves from the data index. As I mentioned before, this can be heavy on memory, but the developer there, Ben Cox, did a really good job optimizing processing. So the operations are really, really fast. Same thing, though, it requires a stable connection and has some of those quality of life helper functions that kind of mirror some of the joins that we see with different views in the user interface. And that'll segue right into an example walkthrough. So getting started starts like any other operation in R and R Studio. You load your necessary packages. As mentioned before, you'll need an API key, so you'll have to reference that, and you can run a retrieval function. I personally start with locations. It's a relatively small data set of 39,000 records currently, and serves as a good starting point for future queries and calls. At the end of this presentation, I'll share this example script that I'll go through and run live here. I'll share a link to that repository at the end. So once we have our access established and retrieve our location records, I functionally use the location records as a lookup table. So in this code snippet, I've got an example of a separated subset of that data with some mutations to change field names so they'll match for future joins, and find data of interest, in this case, selecting specific hatcheries that I want to query release records and by extension recovery records. And narrow that data set so the query is a bit smarter and we're not extracting a large data set without reason. You definitely can, and we'll talk a bit about that in a minute, but this is one way that I've used to find specific data and tailor those queries. So in this example, we've got Kalama Falls Hatchery, which is one of the hatcheries I work closely with. And then using that location data and one more hatchery that's on the Kalama River, we can start to set up parameters for a subsequent query. This is where you can tailor your parameters to fit your needs and leave them as specific or as broad as you care to do. Then we'll set up those parameters on a loop to iterate over each of these like permutations of these parameters to build a cohesive data set. So a quick disclaimer here, as I'm sure many of the folks in this crowd may cringe at my loop structure. I'm a biologist by trade and a programmer by sheer force of will. But either way, here's an example loop that'll iterate over previously selected parameters alongside some error handling to keep the loop progressing even if an error is encountered, as well as an unnecessary, but I think helpful progress bar. The actual RMIS-R function applied here is the getRelease function, which will retrieve data from the releases data table. So one should exercise some caution when constructing these queries, as I mentioned before. Datasets can quickly get cumbersome, and your number of permutations or iterations of a loop can result in really inefficient query structure. In this example, the loop is iterating over the individual tag codes that were retrieved from the previous release records. There's a second loop not shown here that runs that query, but as you can see in the console progress, that's a single iteration of a single tag code each time. So while it runs quickly, you can imagine if you have a massive data set, this is going to become cumbersome in a hurry. There's also some, and that's I just mentioned optimization here. Using common fields and well-constructed queries cuts down on the number of iterations and just increases efficiency. So an example walkthrough, or I'm sorry, after this, we have to clean up that data. So there's no helpful function or no helper functions currently part of the package, and we have to do this sort of manual cleanup. So specifically, I mentioned previous that disparate data tables are holding useful data. So for example, an associated hatchery of origin will be missing from a raw recovery record because that sort of information is stored between both the locations table and the release table. So there's more housekeeping in this script that removes that joins and facilitates those joins, as well as removes any non-numerical values in order to allow for subsequent summation. But the big thing that I want to point out here is this is an opportunity for us to talk about development in the future for helper functions that might facilitate some of these things on the fly rather than having to construct joins manually. And once we have that cohesive data set, we can summarize and analyze. This is a totally meaningless bar chart showing enumerated expanded coded wire tags and terminal areas from the associated hatcheries that were mentioned in the query. But this is just to serve as an example of this can be the next step in the output with some visualization, which can always be helpful for asking further questions or at least getting a handle on the shape of your data as a whole. For some more, I'll go through a couple of actual applied examples aside from just like this illustrative example that I've used in the past. So a common utility for this data can be different metrics of hatchery performance. So a question arose in the region I work in Region 5. That we needed to kind of do some comparative analysis for different fall Chinook release groups, all in the lower Columbia that we would assume face a variety of similar challenges. This is a bias corrected output from a large scale query utilizing the packages that are using the package that I just discussed. So this is a scaled up example of applied example of what I just went through. This is really messy, but the focal point here is that these data have a lot of real world utility. So from this bias corrected data set, we were actually able to model out performance of these performance, and I use that in quotes just as a kind of a catch-all for this like comparative survival metric. Between several different hatcheries in the lower Columbia that was really illustrative of a basin effect that we were experiencing on a specific river system compared to all of these other lower Columbia hatcheries, which has continued the conversation in terms of what we might do to help improve the survival of some of those hatchery programs specifically. And specifically on the recovery data, it's also really helpful for doing large-scale comparisons of distribution among fisheries. These are all fishery or recovery stratum that are located within RMIS data spec. But again, like highlights the utility here of how we can use this data for asking really pointed questions. And with that, I'll open the floor to questions. I've got a couple of resources here, one of which was already highlighted, the data spec, and then I'll drop the link below to this repo. And while folks are thinking of their questions, I'm going to stop sharing and we'll run through the actual workflow in R quick because it's relatively efficient. So it'll actually process pretty quickly start to finish on specifically fetching the location, and then subsequently it'll fetch the release data and the recovery data, and then result in a graph off to the side here. And just to kind of shout out to the efficiency, that was 39,000 and change records in 14.5 seconds. Not bad at all. And there's our graph.
Ooh la
And
la.
with that, I'll stop sharing.
The comments are loving it, Kris. All right, folks, we're going to open the floor, and then we could try doing a new, apparently forms, you can add it to PowerPoint. So we can attempt to do that, but right now we'll just open it, and you guys can ask questions of Kris or Greg, or some of our other developers are online too. So go ahead, Joseph.
I don't know if I have a question as much as I have a general comment about coded wire tag use in general. I work mostly in the Snake Basin, and up here, genetic tools are kind of starting to rue the day. They're kind of like parentage-based tagging. I just can't get away from it. It's everywhere. And within our hatchery programs, we're going to be facing a crisis with marking and releasing fish. We're going to end up reducing wire. Budgets are just going to demand it. So I've been kind of looking for a PBT-based RMIS equivalent. And so it's not really a question. It's more like glimpsing into the future. We're relying less on RMIS and more on PBT-based approaches to analyzing our data and our fisheries. And what I'm finding when I look at my data is I'm getting less RMIS data because we're just not collecting wire from some of our programs because there's no wire. We're just not putting it out at the same rate. So not really a question, but just more like a, and then there's more to this story. Great presentation.
Perfect. That's good to know.
Yeah.
But,
Hey,
you
Joseph,
know,
I'm just going to say
yeah.
there's more to this story. More is coming. And also, great presentation, Kris. I did put a link to your GitHub in the chat too.
And
Questions?
we'll provide links, and also if you guys have suggestions for improvements to the RMIS system or the R package or the API, I mean, that's why we're here, is to help you guys kind of improve this so it works more functionally for you. So if anyone has any suggestions, let's check the chat. Nothing yet. All right, you guys have forced it. I'm gonna try this forms thing. Mari, if you want to drop the link. So some of these are general. Sometimes people are shy about unmuting in big groups, so hopefully this will kind of help you guys, and at least help us gather some feedback. So I don't know if it's going to display or not, but you can use a QR code, or Mari dropped the link so you can click on that, and then I'm pretty sure you can just answer the questions. And this is the first time we've used this, so you might just get to see the questions without the answers quite yet, but I can send some results out after we've distributed it. And then while you guys are doing that, I can read some of these chat questions coming in. Joseph, this one's for you specifically. Maybe a future presentation, would like to see what you're doing. Yeah, Joseph, do you want to present for us? Hey, it's kind of working.
Oh, I have the sniffles.
Don't we all? Look at you when you don't have the sniffles.
Yeah, that's okay. You can present from your home. Keep your sniffles.
And this one is from Nancy for Joseph again. Do you have suggestions of people that could provide presentations or work sessions on PBT analysis We had one presenter come to the RRC-MT to show how he combines CWT and PBT in his analysis. Would be good to get a list of others.
I'm sure we can put our heads together and think about it. It's something that I think is going to be important as we move forward in our evaluations of all our hatchery programs.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Put that on my list of to-dos and follow-ups. All right. You guys are figuring it out. We got 5 responses. And then I might just move forward to the more fun stuff. Helpful if we hosted a class on RMIS. Also, you guys can reply in the chat. All right. Improvements that could make the RMIS system easier to use. An export tool. Some folks don't have suggestions. Linkages. It's a bit challenging. I got a crash course in RMIS, and it's definitely an intense system. Okay. Okay, good. And we can look into setting up some sort of training. Okay. So a lot of you guys haven't used the R package. Okay, that's good to know.
For folks that do use RMIS data, are you mostly accessing it through the front end GUI option, or are you using the API but not with the R package?
Zoe Lewis said yes, the GUI. All right.
And are there changes to the GUI front end that you would like to see?
Okay. A lot of people are saying front end. Why? All right. Ethan Renshaw says from the GUI HTML output, Control A, paste it to Excel.
Hello, Jim Longwell here.
Hey, Jim.
I might also inquire as to who is, if you're using the GUI, if you're using the RMIS standard system or the RMIS analysis, which of the two, those are the two that we have. I just feel free to indicate that. I assume it's RMIS standard is most of the usage, but I wasn't sure.
That's a good question, Jim. Yeah, and if you guys just want to like type in the chat which one you use, if it's one or the other, or maybe use both of them. Looks like mostly standard, Jim. All right. Excellent. We're getting some feedback.
Great, thank you. Yeah, as we work on developing a better GUI interface, I think it'll be neat to, you know, it's great to get some feedback here. This is exactly the kind of thing that we need to hear. So thank you.
And we'll send out a survey too, so you guys can, we're not putting you quite so much on the spot right now. And hopefully you guys can give us some important tips on where you could use some help. All right, any questions, Greg, that would help? Anything on the API that folks are struggling with?
No, not really. Fantastic presentation, Kris.
Absolutely.
That was really great. I love the live demo.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, Jim, I don't think that Greg really described the difference between standard and the analysis. I'm not familiar with RMIS, but maybe that is something that you could speak to. Benefits of using one or the other, and maybe folks would benefit from hearing that. Not to put you on the spot, but
yeah, so the RMIS standard is pretty much as its title is just the way to get directly to the tables and get some summarized and tabulated results from the tables, which is aggregated by some criteria, or raw data through CSV files. I think most people probably get CSV, comma separated value, formatted files. RMIS analysis was developed based on a system used by biometricians in the Puget Sound area of Washington, mostly with Northwest Indian fisheries back in the 90s. And it summarizes, it's based on a summary table built from the recoveries table, which is aggregated by tag code and age class and a different fishery definition, which is more, it's different from the PSC fishery that is defined in the raw data exchange and in the main database. And so it allows aggregation by age class, like age cohort of returning jacks or returning adults. So like year 1, 2, 3, and so on. And it's also, again, summarized by this so-called management fishery, which is, it's just a different way of looking at fisheries with different gear types than that's an alternative from the main fisheries table. In terms of it looks at locations. It looks directly at the location code and utilizes the hierarchical nature of the location code to categorize recoveries into recovery sites. So it also does a geographic analysis that's slightly different from one that you might do if you were getting the raw data results. And that probably confused a lot of people, but that's all I can come up with on the top of my head right now. I can get more details if anyone wants to, consult with me at some point.
Excellent. Thanks,
I just
Jim.
want to say I loved it. That answer is so amazing.
There's a user guide that also online and some descriptive information. I'll see if I can put it in the chat here in just a minute.
Yeah, that'd be perfect, Jim. Also, I plan on sending out with the follow-up email links to the specs sheet and the user guide, so you guys will have access to that stuff too. All right, it's getting kind of quiet out there, which is okay. We got 12 minutes left, so I think we will move on to the wrap up. Alrighty, I'm going to wrap up with a couple of reminders. After this meeting, I'll send up a follow-up email with some links, the survey, and contact information for Kris, Greg, anybody, me, Mari, the gamut. If you'd like to be added to the distribution list, reach out to me, or if you have interesting work you'd like to present, we love hearing it, or presentation recommendation, just send me an email. We aim to be a resource for you, so let us know if you have suggestions. Obviously, we're going to look into maybe creating an RMIS class or some fun like that. And
can I just say that in the request for a class, if we can have some greater understanding of the direction of that, right? Like we focused today on RMIS R and using the API with a free open software package. That is there a different part that you all would be interested in? Because obviously it's pretty complex, even just standard and the analysis side.
Yeah, totally. Good point, Mari. All right, so we'll keep that in mind too when we're kind of fishing. We're fishing for information.
Totally
Dan,
fishing.
Go ahead. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could add a little bit to what Jim said about the differences between standard and analysis. The standard approach is a little more tailored to getting the data as it was given to the RMPC shop. So it's more tailored to seeing exactly what the agencies reported. Although there are some custom reports that we've added to that throughout time, where analysis is exactly what it kind of says. There's some analysis involved, as Jim had indicated.
Excellent.
I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, it definitely was, Dan. Thank you. Great.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
Okay.
Do
Cool.
folks have any further questions? And that we haven't actually lost many folks to dropping off yet. So every time you all engage, Jim and Dan, people are sticking around to listen.
All right. Okay. Alrighty. Well,
Okay.
I think we're good, Mari. We will reconvene this group on April 16th. To close out for today, I'd like to give a big shout out to Kris and Greg for presenting all the fun you can have with RMIS. Oop. Wait, we're getting some questions. Hold on. Oop. Mari, can you see chat?
Yeah,
Are there
so
resources?
Justin,
Yeah, go ahead, Mari.
are there resources available for how some of the RMIS analysis reports are created?
Yeah, if Christopher, thank you for your presentation. If you stay on, I might have a question or two for you. Greg, possibly others if they want to. Thanks.
And then did you guys catch that question? Are there resources available for how some of RMIS analysis reports are created? He's thinking of the TS1 REC report specifically.
Is the TS1 REC actually a standard report versus a analysis report?
Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah, it's one of the summaries by recovery date year, and it maps it out. It gives a plot of returns or a tabulated table of returns for like a set of 10 to 12 years.
Does RMIS have anything like that?
Yeah, TS1 REC is an RMIS.
Is that?
Actually, yeah, tag code summary by recovery date year is what that is.
Okay.
If you see a report in the standard path, it's usually because we've been asked the same question many, many times and created a customized output for that.
Yeah, and I would follow up with that by indicating that these reports date back a long time, I mean decades. And if there's, if you're using the data in a different way, of course now there's the R packages and Shiny apps and all of that. But if you have a simple tabulation, a type of aggregation that you're not seeing, for example, in the recoveries by tag code or recoveries by hatchery type of format, feel free to let us know. Send us, if you have an example of a kind of aggregation that you're looking for that's not there, we could point you to it, or we could build something, based on that.
Excellent. Thanks, Jim. And Justin, always feel free to reach out to us and we can connect you with the right folks to kind of help you and do a more one-on-one. Awesome. All righty. Well, we're wrapping up. Here's a little bit of another possible topic: what and how people are using RMIS data, how RMIS data is being used, and what type of projects. That's a good suggestion, Yvonne. All right, you guys have been great. Coming in at the last minute. All right, well, thanks, Kris and Greg, and thanks to our core team and our task leads, and you guys, our work group. Enjoy the rest of your week.